veterans from Snyder County have a very long legacy of service, and they serve with honor. So I'd like to thank you right off the bat for giving me the opportunity today to come and talk to you about my favorite veterans, the boys of 62, and that's 1862. They're ordinary men who did extraordinary things when they left this area to go off and fight in the American Civil War. During the summer of 1862, President Lincoln sent out his second call for troops. He had, of course, called the first time when the war started in April of 61. And the purpose, of course, was to quell the ongoing insurrection, which to be planning to stop anytime soon. Signs went up all over Snyder County, again, for men to gather in Sealands Grove to enlist. Eventually, 86 of them heeded the call. New recruit Joseph Lombard, who would go on to become the editor of the Snyder County Tribune, he rounded off their number and referred to them ever forward as the Goodly 100, although there were 14 shy of a full company. Most had never been away from home before, and when the war ended, 13 would not come home. An article in the New York Times, and I found this to be really interesting, and I'll kind of make a correlation for you in a minute in my own mind, but an article in the New York Times had a special article about the recruits of 62 and their difference from the recruits of 61 earlier in the war. And this is what the article said. It said, the men who are coming forward now are far superior to those who have filled the regiments that left the state last winter. These are mainly men who seem to be acting not from impulse or necessity, or in the belief that they'll have an easy time of it, but rather from conscientious motives of patriotism, volunteering freely under the full comprehension of the serious nature of the work they will have to do, and with the determination to end the struggle quickly and efficiently. When you go to sign up in times of war, you know the inevitability is that you're going to serve, and the men of 62 knew that would be the case. They already had a little glimpse in the newspapers of what this job was going to look like, and they went anyway. During the nearly 3 years of service that these men had, they traveled over 5,000 miles, and most of that was on foot. They traveled through 12 states and fought in 6 of those. They were in 14 battles, including some of the most major engagements of the war that included places that you've all heard of, places like Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Lookout Mountain, and the Battle of Atlanta. Like today's veterans, they came in all shapes and sizes. Our boys ranged from 5'3", which was a tad diminutive, all the way up to 6 feet tall, which is pretty big back then. They also went a wide range of ages, from the ages of 16, there were 2 of those, all the way up to the age of 45, which, sorry, was kind of old back then. They came from all walks of life as well. Our men were from mostly farmers, a large majority were farmers. They were also carpenters, shoemakers, tanners, blacksmiths, and stonemasons. Elias Miller from Mount Pleasant was one of the 16-year-olds, and he went off to war with his father, Reuben. Reuben was killed in the very first battle in which they participated in, which was the Battle of Chancellorsville, and Elias himself was captured in that battle. But he did survive the war. He finished his service in 65. He came home. He married Elizabeth Mitterly and had 8 children and lived in Mount Pleasant. Just wanted you to know these people were not only defined by their war service, they had lives before and after the war as well. Brothers Benjamin and Martin Parks, 2 of the shortest guys in the unit, 5'3" and 5'3.5" respectively, they went off to war together, and in late June of 1864, Benjamin, who liked to call himself BT, that's what he was known by, BT Parks, was standing on the breastworks during the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, Georgia, and because of his short height, he felt that was a prudent thing to do, although I'm not sure why, and he thought he wanted to get a good view, so he got up there on those breastworks and immediately was shot in the face. Bullet went in here, came out behind his left ear. He would be knocked off the breastworks, knocked nearly unconscious, but immediately got back up and said, "Who threw that rock at me?" For the rest of his life, the man was not going to be able to see out of one ear. Sorry, no one could see out of one ear. Could not see out of one eye, not hear out of one ear, but nonetheless, he was back in the service. Just a couple months later, he went on at the end of the war to become a teacher and then a lawyer. And he died at the age of 77 out there in Lincoln, Nebraska, where he went homesteading. He took land instead of a monetary pension for his service in the war. I'm trying to show you what a tough bunch of guys our guys were. His brother Martin was only 5'3". He was also a very small fellow. and unfortunately got a little smaller after the war because he was conducting a train. He was an engineer on a train for the New Jersey Central Railroad when he fell under his own engine and lost both of his legs below the knees. The railroad did give him a desk job for the rest of his life. He survived to the age of 61 and is buried in Easton. And speaking of relatives in general, you notice how many of these so far are related to each other. Well, that was more the norm than the exception. During the war, this particular company of men had 3 Schroyer brothers, only one of whom came home, a pair of brothers, the Regal brothers, the Parks brothers, the App brothers, the Herbsters, which were 2 brothers and an uncle, the Milhoffs, 2 brothers and a cousin, 2 fathers and son pairings, including the Millers as well as Isaac and Isaac Reed, and then of course 4 Ulrichs, 2 sets of brothers, cousins, one and all. Family history has it that Antis Ulrich, one of those 4, was not originally signed up to go to war. He was a bit old at 39 to go off there to war, but he was standing on the riverbank playing songs on his fife as the company left, patriotic songs, and suddenly an impulsive streak came over him. He thrust his infant daughter into his wife's arms, jumped on the flat with the other men, and remained with them for the duration of the war. Now, if I were his wife, I'd have killed him. I didn't, but neither did the Confederates, and his wife didn't kill him either. So he survived to a ripe old age. He's buried in Middle Creek Township. At the first roll call of the regiment, when these men formed up and went off to war, owing to the number of strange names, quote unquote, in the company, they were nicknamed the Dutch Company. Of course, the names, many still present in our county today, were not strange at all, except to people on the outside looking in. And in any case, they kept the nickname for as long as the company was in service, which was all the way to the end of the war, even though not a single one of those men was foreign born. So, kind of interesting. On one of the long marches, the boys, that's what I like to refer to as them because they were indeed still pretty much boys back then in their teens, in their early 20s. The boys played a trick on Freddie Ulrich because he always insisted on carrying a spare pair of boots along with him, and he kept them slung over his knapsack. So as they moved along, the boys would drop little stones into the shoes as they went along. By the way, the boots actually were almost full by the time he figured it out. And when he did figure it out, he was pretty much played out, and he was ready to throw the boots away. He was ready to discard them. But instead of discarding them, he let the stones and the German swear words fly. During the last few months of the war, our boys were marching south through South Carolina. Actually, they were burning their ways through South Carolina, when Jerry Moyer of the company went in search of water. He found a well surrounded by a lot of thirsty boys from other regiments, but he managed to get near enough to dip his coffee kettle into the pail as it was coming up to the top. And just as he reached for his water, another soldier reached over his head, shoved his cap off, and it fell into the well. He came back to the company swearing in Dutch, saying, and I will do my best to give you a good Pennsylvania German rendering of what he said, "A third brigade feller stroked my hat de Bruna, and I wouldn't care for that hat over the numbers." He was really upset because he had the hat insignia, the brass numbers and letters on the top of his hat, and he had just bought them a year before from a settler, and that's what he minded so much being at the bottom of the well, not so much the hat. Company G somehow always retain this really tough and sometimes humorous spirit throughout the war. When they came home, though, they struggled to fit in. The life as they had known it wasn't so much different back here in the county, but they were different because of what they had experienced. So they started to gather together regularly to reform the bonds that they had developed during their service time, the camaraderie. The first formal meeting was held in 1873, and they continued every year after that to commemorate their departure to the front by having a bean soup. Yeah, like the one you guys have. Our boys commemorated their bean soup until 1826, but somewhere in between 1873 and 1926, the veterans at this end of the county started one, and yours is still going strong today, and I love that. After the war, all of the boys of Company G who were not already married did so, and many of them honored their service by naming their children after the men under whom they served. So you have Nelson Byers. Nelson had no sons, which was probably a pretty big disappointment, but anyway, he named one of his daughters Nellie Sherman, after General William Tecumseh Sherman, who led them in the Battle of Atlanta. Samuel Jarrett had a William Tecumseh, and Isaac Knapp and Elias Miller both had a William Sherman. Probably a good thing they didn't move south after the war. What do you think? Levi Romick named one of his sons Sigel McClellan, which took care of 2 officers. And Lombard, always thinking big, named his son George Meade after the victor of Gettysburg. We do have, however, Freddie Ulrich named his son William Slocum, and that was the 12th Corps commander that they served under for most of the war. But you'll find it interesting. I do know, his great-great-grandson, who was the coroner of Northumberland County years ago. He came to me one day, he knew I was doing this research, and I told him about his great-great-granddaddy serving under General Slocum, and he said, that's where that weird family name came from. I was glad to enlighten him on that. John Regal didn't have enough kids to go around, so he only had one son. He named him William Abraham Lincoln Regal, in honor of the general and the president. He grew up to become a doctor. Another influence of the war that these veterans saw their world as a much bigger place. You know, Snyder County's kind of small compared to the big world at large. And once these men got away from it, well, it just was hard to stuff them back in that small box again. So almost all of their families lived in this county many generations before they went off to war. After the war, within 20 years, these veterans could be found in Williamsport, Hazleton, Philadelphia, Easton, Ligonier, a lot of other Pennsylvania towns, and also in states such as Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Kansas, Michigan, Florida, Washington, and the Dakota Territories. They really spread their wings. It would appear they saw nothing on their march through the sunny South, however, that appealed to them, because not a single one of these men moved to any state they fought in. And I'm assuming it's because they were probably aware they wouldn't really be welcome there for a little while. Life went on for these fortunate men that had come home from the war, but it was their status as veterans that they really embraced. They loved being defined by their service. Several Grand Army posts, because of that, sprung up in our county. Most of the larger towns in the county had one, and most of our veterans began to join them starting around 1870. Every Decoration Day, now our Memorial Day, these veterans would place lights and flowers on the graves of all those who served. By cut out just my son and I'll shout. In a gesture of patriotism, the survivors of Company G offered their services to the governor of Pennsylvania when the Spanish-American War broke out. Now, I have to tell you, it's probably a good thing they didn't go, because to a man, they were all well over 50 by then. And warfare had seriously changed by then. In fact, so many changes had occurred in these men's lives. These men of Company G witnessed 3 presidential assassinations. They heard one president speak to the nation from radio waves for the very first time. They witnessed the invention of the automobile, the telephone, radios, phonographs, and electric light bulbs. Many of them also lived to witness 2 more wars during which men fought from airplanes and tanks using machine guns and poison gas. The men of Company G would be pleased to know that they and their service have not been forgotten. Not then, not now. Their ranks have been joined by many others from the county over the years, and we won't forget them either. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. On behalf of the American Legion family here, we'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation. We also have certificates for all of the participants, so we'll get them to them here sometime. Founded in 1919, the American Legion Auxiliary was organized to assist the American Legion. Today is so much more. These women volunteer countless hours and make many charitable contributions, all in the name and in honor of those who serve our great nation. Please join me in welcoming President of the McClure American Legion Auxiliary Unit, Judy Pheasant.
The poppies that are handed out today are a reminder of the sacrifices that our veterans and service people have made for us. Our veterans in the VA hospitals hand assemble the poppies, and they get paid several cents a piece for each poppy they assemble. And for some of the veterans in the hospitals, that's all the money they ever received. And every cent of the money that we collect here today or any time when the poppies are out, it's used for local veterans and or their families who may need help, whether it be gas money to travel back and forth if a veteran's in the hospital or if there's another need. So if anybody knows of a veteran or their family who needs help, let us know. We help out, but we don't disclose the information to anyone other than the veteran or the family that we do help them. It's a confidential thing. And I'd like to say that Memorial Day has a special meaning for me because my dad he was in the Army in World War II and was a radio operator. And he died 28 years ago. And his brother Donald Weeder, my uncle, was in the Korean War. And he had been, and I think he may still be, a member of this Legion post. He was for years. And my uncle Kenneth Will was in the Air Force, and he served in Germany and I believe Africa. And he's now passed away for about 3 or 4 years. And I have brother Steve Weeder. He's a retired Navy officer with a registered nurse's degree. And he was stationed at the Walter Reed Hospital for several years. And he was a nurse for Admiral Byrd and Presidents Richard Nixon, John Kennedy, and several other political figures. And he still works on vacation days and things that people take off in the surgical center in Florida. And in yesterday's Sentinel, there was a poem that was written by a Sandy, Rudy, and Port Royal, Lest We Forget. And I thought this really says it all for Memorial Day. Lest we forget the blood that was shed in lands far and near, and broken families that had to deal with the death of one so dear. They bravely answered the call and put their lives on the line, knowing they may not come home again. We must never forget their kind. They gave the ultimate sacrifice to keep this country free. These noble soldiers we must salute. They died in service for you and me. Lest we forget the price they paid in death and bodies broken and torn by the enemies of this country. They fought to keep freedom in the land where they were born. Never can we take lightly the freedom that we all share. Countless brave souls fought to the end. They proved how much they cared. We bless each one who lives and all who died to keep America the land of the free. And today it is them we honor for all the world to see. May God bless America and all who have done and continue to do their part to keep our country free. And I'd like to personally thank all the veterans today too. And we have 2 junior auxiliary members here today again. And I messed up. Some of you have programs with the names reversed one way and another way, but handed the paper out with one girl's name on to the wrong girl. So we have it cleared up. So at this time, Alexis Arnold will read in Flanders Fields.
So hold on high, and he breaks faith with us to die. You shall not sleep, that poppies grow in Flanders fields.
And another junior auxiliary member, Emily Romig, will read America's Answer.
Press DEPC Flanders dead, the fight that you so bravely led. We've taken up and we will keep true faith with you who lie asleep. With each a cross to mark his bed and poppies blowing overhead. When once his own life blood ran red, so let your rest be sweet and deep in Flanders fields. Fear not that ye have died for naught, the torch ye threw to us we caught. 10,000,000 hands will hold it high, and freedom's light shall never die. We've learned the lesson that ye taught in Flanders fields.
Again, I have certificates here for Alexis and Emily. Thank you, Judy. And everybody can join me in welcoming back Miss Molly Sellers.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, though far off song that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. It sounds in echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? And though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. And though the darkness round me rolls, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, though far off song that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Echo is in my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
And Molly, here's your certificate. With their final performances of the day, once again, the West Snyder Community Choir.